I'd like to call the meeting to order. If board members would please just turn your microphone on and leave it on, and then you need to be about 6 or 8 inches away from the microphone, so it will pick up your voice, but if you just leave it on, that will be the best way to do it, okay? So there are cards going around, hopefully everybody will get a chance to sign them before we leave tonight, and we'll be all, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any citizen comments about something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, are there any additions to the agenda by board members or the superintendent? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our action items. The first one is approval of minutes of our October 6th meeting. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the minutes as written.
Second. So it's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of October 6th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Looks unanimous. Thank you. So the next one is to accept the resignation of one of our nurses, Justin Easter. Do I have a motion? No, we're not. We're saying no.
I moved that we accept the resignation of our nurse, Justin Easter, with great regret.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to accept the resignation of Justin with great regret. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? We're doing the resignation of Justin. To accept the resignation of one of our nurses, Justin Easter. So you with us? Okay, so it looks like it's unanimous. We will accept his resignation. The next one is for the appointment of first probationary contract nurse, Daniel Rand. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the Daniel Rand as first probationary contract nurse. Very grateful.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation for probationary contract nurse, Daniel Rand. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Is it strictly a program nurse or will the person be covering?
So Ryan, can you address that?
Yeah, I know how close do I need to do this? Can you hear me? All right, perfect. I know the nurses are meeting on Friday to discuss that, the onboarding of it, and part of it will be contingent on some of the past experience of the individual coming in and the best places to utilize that person in the interim of hopefully finding a new nurse to fill Justin's shoes. So they hope to have a plan, I think, sometime after Friday.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? So it's unanimous that we will accept the appointment of Daniel Rand. So the next one is the appointment of first probationary contract teacher, gifted and talented, for Mary Freeman. Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the appointment of first probationary contract teacher, Mary Freeman, as gifted and talented. Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to accept the nomination of Mary Freeman. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Again, unanimous. And the last one, action item is the awarding of the snowplow and sanding contract. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept and award the snowplow contract from Manchester Elementary School to Scott Ryan Construction, the amount of $9,800.
Second?
So it's been moved and seconded to accept, to award the snowplow sanding contract to Scott Lyon for $9,800. Any discussion?
Is this relatively close to the last year's price? Or are we?
It is up quite a bit. Last
thought.
year, we paid 6,800. Next year, or for this coming year, he's charging 9,800.
Was there any reason behind that, did he say? Or?
No. That was just his quote, and it's the only one that we received, so.
Sean?
I did see what last week.
Not in one way, yeah, I don't know,
There
sorry.
you are.
The,
Oh, it's on.
I think Reed Fields was 9,800 as well from, I look back. And so, and I think that went up from last year as well. So I know plowing is going up quite a bit.
I mean, gasoline's up, what, $1 in the
Oh, I'm not
last
questioning
6
it, I'm
months?
just trying to
So,
put in
you know.
perspective.
My only question is were we looking for more? Did we just accept that one? I know that they were just waiting on that one bid to come in. Did we reach out to other companies? Did we reach out to these companies? Did we research more into if there was any other options or any other companies that would be willing to do it? I know they talked briefly about that last meeting, but
It's been advertised a couple times, and we had to actually, Sean, I don't know where Sean, Sean's back here. Sean actually had to start calling people to find somebody who'd be willing to do it because we could not find anybody from Manchester.
so was this the only person that we called? I guess
No.
is my question.
Well-
You said we started calling people, but I just want to make sure that we called more than one person to try to solicit for the position.
Because we put it out for bid and everything, and then where I got no bids at all, I went around and I asked, because we use John Cushing for other schools, I asked him if he could fill in and help us with Manchester Elementary this year, and he was tied up, he couldn't take on anymore. I asked Sid Smith, he couldn't take on anymore. I asked Don out of Mount Vernon, and he just does roads, he doesn't do schools. And I don't want to say it's a bad thing, but I don't know a lot of big businesses around here because I'm not from here. So I asked the people that I know of now. And like I said, then I went to Scott Lyons and finally got a hold of Scott. It is a lot more money, and I think he knows that we didn't get any bids, and I'm sure he raised the price that way too, but we have to do something. We're getting that close, so.
Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
Dave?
Is this a given, or we don't have the expected amount of snow this year? Does that go down?
That's the contracted amount. Is that right, Bridget? Regardless. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, so the next, sorry. The next item on our agenda is just an informational item. And we got lots of great information from all of the principals on how they plan work plans for students who are out of school, whether it's COVID, strep throat, whatever they're out for. And those were very comprehensive. So thank you very much for providing those for us. Are there any questions for any of the principals on any of the information that we saw? David?
No questions, but sort of as you said, just very grateful, and I thought they were very clear, to me anyway, and helpful. And so I think us seeing and understanding what the parents are being given so that to help them see and understand is very good. Thank you.
And I thought the same thing. I thought, oh, good, this was great. Now when I get a question from a parent, I will know exactly what to say. So thank you for providing that to us. Any other questions or discussion?
Have they had any feedback on anyone at home that it's going well or not going well or nothing?
Well, we have the opportunity to give you an answer for that, sadly, because we have children out on remote. And to be honest with you, it's really a grade by grade variation of what they can do with computer skills. Can they connect with the classroom? Right now we have 3 fifth graders out and a 4th grader. Because they already are doing a lot of things online, they can join their same book club. They either send the book home or we send the audio link of the chapter. And they can do a written response that the class can see with that. So they're happy. Parents have not asked for more. You know, they'd always like us to give more, but it's finding that balance all the time. Some parents have requested paper when they're younger, especially could you give us a paper packet of math papers or something and writing paper, handwriting paper. So we absolutely supply that. So each family asks for things in a different way and have different technology skills and different adults that could supervise the children. So we try to be as responsive as possible to find a way to connect the children to classroom learning that's actually happening. And so that it's not an overwhelming amount of work for the teacher too, because they can't do it during the day. And the expectation is that they load it in one day at a time. So if the student is doing the work and wants more, it's not as much work for the teacher to load it in and they know right where the rest of the class is. So far it's been going okay, hoping we don't have a lot of opportunity to use it.
Thank you, Abby. Jeff, did you want to add to that, Jeff?
Yeah, just
Okay.
real quick. We were asked to put together a plan for the board. This has not been discussed with the teachers yet. This was just a plan that was discussed with the principals. I want you to understand that first. And then the second thing is with the expectations this year compared to last year, we have more kids in the classroom in front of us. We're still dealing with the quarantines. It requires time on the teacher's part to put together thoughtful and creative plans for the students. And that's sort of what's missing so far this year is when we have classes go out or part of a class go out, not the whole class, because it's different if the whole class goes out because you can do a remote session. We are still, there is still that time that is needed to put those together, which we don't have right now. And the other thing we're at least at Reedfield I can speak of, I've been trying repeatedly to get forms in, whether it's using Zoom, medical forms or whatever. We still have about 50 families that have not filled those out. And it wasn't until we had to go remote with one classroom that we actually got those filled out. So there's a few things that we're still barriers we're fighting to get everything in place. I just wanted the board to be aware of that.
So Jeff, is there a plan in place to bring this to the teachers and?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We would like some, you know, we haven't had a chance as a full team to come together and look at everyone's plans and talk about it, but we want to bring it to the teachers as well. So this was our first shot at
Thank you.
putting this out.
Yeah, it looks great. So
Thank
thank you. Wait a minute, Rebecca had a question and then Sean.
I too thought that these were very clear and easy to follow, and so I appreciate that. But I just want to make sure that the students that maybe don't have an environment that would be supportive in this way aren't going to get, aren't going to fall through the cracks as far as their learning. Do we have some kind of support set up for those students who may not be supported if they need to work remotely?
Absolutely. We would help support them with remediation and other things when they return to school. We do constant check-ins and assessments to see where they are. Oftentimes they can simply read or do other things that do help move them or continue what they have. It's so case by case and situation by situation. We just, there's no one answer that I can give you, but we absolutely, they're not penalized. They don't lose recess to complete work if they weren't able to within their family. We help them as we can, provide a little additional tutoring, prioritize the work that they missed rather than maybe have them do it all, have them what would be the most relevant to continue on with lessons. And just hope that their absence was a minimal number of days. I mean, we're at the situation right now, we have a child that he could be out for 3 weeks, each family member gets. And it starts the 20-day cycle all over again. So really hoping that we can have minimal impact for him. But
Thank
that's
you.
an excellent question.
Sean, did you have a question?
Well, yeah, thanks, Mr. Boston, for that clarification, because I was kind of wondering, because they look nice on paper, but that's not reality what's happening. And so, or at least in our situation. And so, is there any thought of, can we transition? I mean, there's more and more kids. I mean, we're getting hit every day with kids, and how Abby just said that they're even going to be, I think, Wayne closed down altogether, if I recall correctly. And I know multiple kids personally, just through two of my own. So is there any way we could transfer some of that money so some of these kids could be getting that help? Because pretty much they're on their own at home unless the teacher is available, and the teacher is doing, I'm not faulting the teacher at all because they're working their butts off, but the kids are kind of on their own unless they can get someone to help them. So could we transfer some of that ARPA? Can we move any of that federal money around? Because I think there's going to be more and more kids going out on quarantine, and these kids are going to get further and further behind. And I don't want to fault, everybody is working hard. Everyone has been great, but this is getting, they need the help, and the kids need the help.
I agree, Sean, and I'm not sure, but maybe Bridget could answer the question about if we could move some of that money around. And did you have some, like, you think you might hire somebody to help
I
them?
mean, because once a kid runs into a roadblock, they're done for the day till a teacher is available.
Right.
And for example, at the middle school, how I read the plan is you can do virtual or in person, but the elementary is only offering Zoom, and I'm sure that's because that's what they have available to them. I'm not faulting that, but that's a big difference.
Bridget?
One of the projects in the Art ESSER 3 grant that's been submitted is a big pool of money for tutoring. Now, I'm sure that could be used that way. I just don't think we've had time to set that up yet, but there is. I don't know if you remember when Jay brought the whole proposal to the board, and the board, one of the projects was to do some additional renovations, and the board said they wanted to see that moved into student supports rather than that. So there was 80,000 that was moved from renovation type projects into this tutoring project, but I just don't think it's had time to be formalized yet. But there is money in the grant that could be used for that.
Thank you.
David?
Yeah. Sure. You can hear me, right? So,
Yeah.
Yesterday in Manchester, Garden, we lost power for half an hour. So what happens to the children that aren't in class? Is it easy for them to make it up more?
That's a question that we've been asked before, and that's a good question because it happens a lot in Mount Vernon. We lost power yesterday too.
It's happening more and more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I noticed that the spectrum lags behind electrical sometimes.
Yes.
And I don't know how it's affecting the kids. And do you have to, I guess, confirm that there was a power outage in these areas for the kids so they don't use the excuse, or how is that made up?
So we were the pleasure of being the first remote school, on Monday and Tuesday in Wayne. And I was at the high school last year. We never, if somebody called us and said they didn't have power, we never questioned that. Like, all we needed was even an email afterwards that I lost power. We never question it. We never blink an eye if somebody says they don't have power. What I heard from my teachers on Monday and Tuesday was they couldn't believe the number of kids, because we were fully remote, that were Zooming. I do have one class that is basically quarantined, and the teacher's been Zooming, and they are all showing up. The teachers are amazed that kids are showing up, and we're running a normal schedule. I will say that in talking with the teachers at Wayne, I've never asked them to Zoom in kids who are quarantined. And when we started this conversation last week, not realizing where we were going to be this week, I had a teacher who said, half of my class is out. I want to Zoom. Can I? And I said, I am not asking you to do that, but if that is what you feel you want to do, I had given her this. I had actually given this to her last week and said, this is what we're going to do. And she said, well, that's great. And I can do that if they can't join the Zoom, but I really want them to join my class. And she did say, she goes, it's a lot of work, but she was willing to do it. I think the thing is that we realized last year at the high school doing that, it was really super difficult. But I truly believe we're really blessed in this district with teachers that are willing to go above and beyond for students and to make a difference. If they don't have internet, they're willing to make packets, talk to parents, do whatever they need to do to keep kids engaged. So I think we're really blessed in this district and have phenomenal teachers.
Jade?
I guess my question is, when we have these kids who are sent home, whether half the class is quarantined, they have the ability to do Zoom. Sorry, can you hear me better now?
Should be pushed up towards you.
I think you just need to get.
Just get a little closer, Jake.
6 inches or something.
Is that better? I don't hear it at all.
Yeah,
Is it,
you can hear it, yeah.
is it better on this one? I don't think this one's working. Unless I just reset it. It's working now. All right, there we go. So I guess my concern is if we're able to do that, why can't we at least record those for kids who can't see them, power goes out? Why can't we record the class? Is there like laws or something that prevents them from being able to do that? But somebody can tune into the class and have it be live. Because like this, that's a little, but there's multiple schools doing it. I guess from my understanding of it, there's a lot of districts that are able to do that and have allowed kids to zoom into the classroom to be able to be part of those lessons, and then they aren't getting behind, they're still getting that same class lesson.
That goes back to the answer to the discussion that Jeff was talking about the workload for teachers. The amount of technology that needs to be set up to do that is not something they have readily available while they're ready to teach lessons that they have on hand, especially for the younger children and the time. It sounds in theory like it's possible. In the older grades, it's a little bit more because the kids are very much more computer savvy and fluent and have the skills. The younger kids, the teachers aren't ready set up to do that and to do lessons on a whiteboard, showing children and showing responses and things. So the workload, when they're already working a full day planning and their time is completely there with the kids. When the kids get off the bus at 7:30, they are with students until the end of the day. You're adding a lot to their workload from technology and setting it up and interacting and doing a timely
But if you're not
interaction.
interacting, if they don't allow for questions, like in this scenario right now, there's people who are zooming in potentially and watching the meeting, but they can't respond, they can't talk or anything like that. So if we have that capability, at least families, because especially with little kids, there's somebody at home with them who would be able to work through some of those problems and be able to troubleshoot with them. But it is, I think, families at home an idea of what they should be working on, what their day is looking like in class, and keeping them on track so we're not falling behind. But it's just setting it up in a fashion of hey, it's on, you have kids who are zooming in remotely, but not having the teacher interact with that. If there was a question and the teacher could get back to it, that would be great. But it just gives the family the ability to work on that and stay up with what the class is doing. Is what I was wondering.
Right, absolutely. That's the expectation when the class is fully remote, that it will be live. Up to 90 minutes a day will be live. Again, the technology that's needed, it requires an OWL We don't have an owl in each classroom. We have one in the building to zoom in and set it all up. It's hard to see, and oftentimes the learning, like, let's talk about math, is often the teacher may present a problem, the children work together, they work in small group for discussions, they plan together, they problem solve together. It's hard to replicate with some in the room and some not in the room. Just the format of instruction in the elementary school would be a struggle without being able to, like, fifth graders can respond in the group chat and they can kind of connect with each other that way and problem solve together online. Littler kids don't have those technology skills to be able to do that. So I don't know how they could work with peers in a small group. And so so a lot of it recorded, it would still be hard for families to see what's going on and interact and ask questions. Again, it's a great theory. It's got many constraints from time management of getting it done. You can't record because you've got other students' faces and responses, so that they have to be kept personal, especially if we don't have a media release on students and things. So you can't record it for families to see. Typically, teachers send home work that students can work on fairly independently and then send back to the teacher. They will send it back to them. And then it should be aligned to what the classroom is. So it isn't the same as being in person.
So what I'm hearing, all of you administrators, and Kristen, you're next, I promise. What I'm hearing all of you say is that, and we realize how much work this is for the teachers, but I think what I'm hearing you say is that the teachers are all being flexible. They're being flexible when it comes to, I didn't get this assignment done, I didn't get that assignment done. I mean, it's not like, okay, it's not due right now, so you're getting a 0. So I think we really appreciate the fact that even though this isn't perfect, and it's not ever going to be perfect, that the flexibility that the teachers are showing and providing for the students and their families is what's really important. So Kristen.
Sorry, I picked the worst spot to sit in. You can't see me. So I just wanted to speak from the middle school perspective. We've had a number of cases, and for whatever reason, I feel like they've hit one team with the same kids in it every single time. Some people might know what that's been like. And I think every time we do get parent feedback, and we're doing, I think what you were given has been changed since then. We just keep changing it and updating our remote plan just because we're trying to make it better based on that feedback, but we're trying to make everything better. And then I also just wanted to do a quick plug-in because my son is at Wayne and he's remote. He's on the quarantine list and he's with my father this week, and my father taught for 42 years and he was called to just say how great Mrs. Wellman was. He was like, everything she's doing is perfect. So I just wanted to put that in too.
So before you step away, I just want to ask a question about the asynchronous learning. Now, when you say asynchronous, is that like a recorded lesson that the teacher is, so how does that work? And I'm thinking more about high school as much as anything. And I'm thinking about somebody in a high school math class that they've gone on Google Classroom, they've gotten their assignments, they've got this part, they have to solve a quadratic equation, and they're like, okay, I don't know how to do that. Where do I go now? There's no help right now. So that's my concern, is that they don't know what to do and where to go, so they just stop.
So at the middle school, we just started it this last round of quarantine students, but at 120, we have help. So kids are expected, anyone who's remote is supposed to go on, and they have a staff member there who can answer some questions. Speaking of math, it happens to be a math interventionist who's doing it most of the time. So that's something that we have, but it's definitely not the same as being there. I mean, they're told to email their teachers, but that's still not the same.
Chris, can I ask you a question, please?
Tyler? Wait a minute, Tyler's got his arm
This
up.
is more just if Dave wants to go first, my question is more just general. Is it general?
Mine's direct to you.
Yeah.
Are most of the quarantines just because the students are under that closer than 6 feet? Or is it like lunchroom exposures, bus exposures?
It's a combination of everything. And then we have the 0 to 3 feet and then the 3 to 6 feet. And then about a third of our students are vaccinated. So they're in a different world. So it's a lot of everything. Lunch, bus, and sports are the ones that are impacting the most of out of school quarantines. In school, it's other than lunch in the bus. It's more the 3 to 6, so it means that they're community quarantine, so they can come to school, but they can't do things outside of school.
So my question's more broad. We've got the 80,000 that we've appropriated. And I think a lot of this gets back to I don't think the teachers, I mean, they're doing a lot. I think if we use that money towards maybe another interventionist or just more support staff for the teachers. Because I mean, we're going to have 5 to 11 vaccinations supposedly by the end of next month, supposedly. I just think having more interventionist staff on hand with that $80,000, well, I mean, even if we stop having quarantine, just starting to fill, having that extra staff to start filling learning gaps, or while we're still in the quarantine to assist with remote learning on a case-by-case basis, I think that would be a great use of that money. If
Dean?
we can afford it.
I guess my problem is we were given these countermeasures, if you will, by the CDC. Basically have had COVID, get the vaccine, mask mandate, or pool testing. I think there's a lot of confusion among parents about pool testing, where yes, we mandate masking, so we get that, the fourth exception to, like you said, not have to quarantine. You have to community quarantine, but you can go to school. With pool testing, if it's a lunchroom exposure, a bus exposure, or a school classroom exposure, as long as you're in pool testing, you still can go back to school. So if that's where we're losing a lot of our children is in those areas, I think something needs to be, rather than spending $80,000 more on another interventionist, we have these tools that we could use that would be very helpful, that I think a lot of parents don't know are there, that we should start using.
So we had talked about getting some kind of frequently asked questions out to parents at our last meeting so that they would understand a little bit more about how that was going to impact the quarantine and all that. And just.
So one of the things that I've been asked to do, obviously, besides filling in for certain decisions that happen on a daily basis, is the COVID procedures. You probably see letters I've been writing pretty frequently, or transportation issues, and then working with the nurses. So we've been meeting every Friday. And one of the things that was on the list since the last board meeting was to do a frequently asked questions and trying to really tie it to the benefits of participating in pool testing, because like I spoke about the last time, the response numbers were low enough that constructing pools was going to be really challenging. So some of the consents have come back. Some have come back as a result of some of the larger quarantines that we've had. And I think that's certainly helped the numbers, but they're still not above 30% as a district. And so Friday, our hope is, and I think we're close to doing this, everyone's really trying hard to balance the day-to-day pieces of what the nurses are doing, and then also come up with an accessible document. So their hope is to do another rollout of these frequently asked questions in addition to consent form again, end of the week, first part of next week, and then really try to catch enough families that would be willing to participate so that the pools could be constructed in a way that would be viable. And so it looks like it's getting closer, and it feels like we're making 2 steps forward, and then we're losing a nurse and taking 1 step back, but then gaining a COVID nurse and taking a half step forward. I mean, however we look at it. So it's certainly an uphill battle in some ways, because some of these nurses that are asked to put together these sheets are also being asked to contact trace for 6 to 8 hours a day, and that takes a lot of their time and energy. And I'm at least in trying to support that process right now. We're trying to balance putting a lot of extra time to get these documents done, but also making sure that they can still get through their regular daily process. So we have a draft. It's almost done. Don't have anything to share tonight, but I do know that the nurses feel pretty comfortable with it. Hopefully it's an accessible document for families that answer some basic questions, and hopefully it can kickstart some more consent so that they can look to start that process. So almost there.
Thank you.
Let's make sure there's any other. Go ahead, Jade.
Only concern is I don't know if it's working.
I don't think it's on.
I don't think it's, no.
Just one.
I'm just gonna take this one because it works. So I guess my concern is one, the staffing to be able to do pool testing. Two, the kid has to be part of pool testing to be excluded when a quarantine comes out. There are a lot of parents that don't want pool testing because it is testing your kid. And I don't think that when it was explained to me, it's there to show us like the kids are positive or whatnot, right? And who's able to go back to school. So, and the original test is you swab 20 kids. I think it has to be at least 20 that you put
5.
into this pool.
It's 5 now.
It's
5.
5 and
5.
then maximum of 20 or
25.
25.
And
So-
so, 30% is just the efficiency of it. If you have at least 30% of your school, then it's a greater tracker to capture the COVID picture, if that makes sense.
Right. But you take those, you swab those 25 kids, for example, so you get enough kids that you can do a pool of 25 and they're going to separate it by groups of grade. So you swab those kids, you don't know which swab is which kids. They get sent off and tested. One of them comes back positive. All of those kids have to be retested. And then what happens when it's negative? Then you have a whole other issue because the original test is a PCR. It's not actually, so typically what happens is you would Binex test somebody, which is the original one, that's the antigen testing. So you would do that test, and if that's positive, you would follow it up with a PCR test. So the way this one's working is it's backwards. So, and even the ER doctor who was here the other night, same thing, it's backwards. So the Binex test, or the 15-minute that they can read on station, which is the one you follow up the PCR that gets mailed out with, what's going to happen is there's going to be a negative because it's not as sensitive. So then what? What happens next? Are all those kids still in quarantine until we figure out, hey, well, which kid's going to come back positive in 2 days? Or do they all go back to class and then we have the same problem anyway because there's going to be a kid spreading COVID because the PCR was more sensitive than the antigen test. I think it gets very confusing and very muddied watered, and the nurses are going to be the ones that have to track it down. And I don't feel like we have enough staff to do that, especially where we just lost a nurse. We're gaining one, but is that going to be enough to cover this for 4 different areas? Are they going to go to every different school? I guess my concern is there going to be enough bandwidth for them to manage that? Is there other staff that are able to help in this situation? Able to help with the pool testing, able to help in any of it? Is that the plan?
I mean, I think it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's really hard to be able to answer one question without at least pursuing other avenues. So I think that's what the nurses are on track and the path to do, is they're first trying to get enough, and Dana's right in terms of the pool sizes. When you're talking 5 to 25, you just have to be able to get enough participants to be able to construct a meaningful pool. And so if we're talking about a pool that's an easy one where you talk about a 3rd grade pool in a building, then you would need 5 at a minimum. You're probably not going to want to test all 25, but you would need to be able to at least get to that first threshold of having enough participants to construct meaningful pools. And then from that, then the nurses, and they're not shy about giving their opinion, so I'm sure they're not going to stop to say that they can or can't. They're going to say whether they can or can't do it, but you can't get to the point to know if you have the bandwidth to do it if you're not pursuing it. And I think the purpose of trying to pursue the pool testing is really as another mitigation or preventative measure to give a picture of something that can tell more. And it does give more flexibility in some of these cases to be able to allow more participation and less loss of school time. So I think, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think that's something that they do track in terms of the number of students that wouldn't have been impacted by these quarantines and would have been able to come to school rather than be full school quarantines. And the numbers are significant in terms of, you're not talking just 2 or 3 kids, you're talking 30 plus kids over these cases that we've run through. And I think that's, in working through the actuality of the cases, that seems to be a benefit enough to at least try to pursue that to see if it is feasible. We might get to the point that we have the participation numbers, we have the test kits, we have the process, but then we don't have the nursing staff. And I don't think that, it won't be me at that time, but I don't think Superintendent Charette will come back on behalf of the nurses and ask something to be done that isn't feasible to be done. But I don't think that one thing can stop just because we're not sure about that. I think it's a parallel track, and it's hard to do all those things because you're not sure where they'll go. And the nurses have those conversations all the time. But I think you have to kind of align something to be possible in order to make it possible when the time may be right. And I think everyone's aware that there might not be a right time for it, that we might not be able to control, but they do feel pretty comfortable with at least trying to pursue getting enough pool participants and consents to be able to make a rational decision. Because then they have to start constructing pools, and they generally have a sense of that, but they won't know that until they get enough numbers.
So I think it would behoove us to wait and see what the nurses have to say when you meet on Friday and then continue to discuss that then. But I just want to know if there are any more questions about the work at home plans for our students from any of the administrators. John?
So when are these plans gonna, like, is it this week? You're trying to put this into place or next week? I mean, give two real world examples and it's what I know. I've had one child out of school 17 days. Another child that's gonna be out of school, I don't know how many days. And it's unfortunate. I've heard of kids that have been out of school almost 30 days. And it's unlucky for kids, like they don't know who they were near. But I'm not blaming everybody's working hard. Nobody's doubting that. I don't want anyone to doubt that anyone think the kids are working hard, the teachers are working hard, everybody's working hard. But there are kids who are getting 3 hours, 2 hours worth of work a day. That's it. And the work isn't as challenging. I don't know how to solve the problem, but we were here a year ago, I feel, and we thought it was going to go away. And I feel there's more kids out now this year than there were last year when we were back in school.
It feels to me, Sean, like it's more complicated this year than it was last year because of the kids that are out for quarantine. It's not all remote. We're asking people to do so much. So I agree with you. I mean, I have some experience with students being out as well. And kids are falling behind and it's worrisome. I mean, we're going into 3 years of disruption to their education. And we know that everybody is working as hard as they can, but we need to figure out how to keep kids in school. That to me is the bottom line.
But also if they can't be in school because of rules that are out of our control, like 10 days is 10 days I don't know, like kids, I don't know if they're fine or not, but they test negative before the 10 days is up, I can tell you that. And that's not our fault. That's controlled by Augusta. Like I live it every day. And so, but we've got to figure out a way to get these kids an education. I mean, a kid misses 20 days of school and is getting 3 hours of school a day at tops when they're not there. That's a huge issue. It's a huge problem.
It is.
And if it takes more money, we've got to be real about it and spend the money to educate these children. Because if they missed 30 days this year, 30 days last year, they were behind what we got at the end of the school year last year. They're behind and we're going to catch them up this year. We're going to do the best. Don't say they're behind. We're going to catch them up. But if they've been out of school for 30 days, how are they catching up?
And I think you're right. I agree that we need to come up with some kind of a plan. And if it means hiring more people, I don't know if that's the answer, but I think it would be great if we could really have a plan in place to really look at what we're going to do. And this is great for absent students. I mean, this is good for all absent students. This is whoever's absent. But I think we need something a little bit more specific, whether it's hiring people with the money that we've got or whatever it is. But it would be good if we could see a plan, because I am getting very concerned about the number of days that some kids are missing for the third year in a row. And it's going to start to really impact. And I'm worried about the younger kids too. I mean, they are missing out on so much right now by being home. It's very hurtful.
I heard that you can't record. I mean, and I know people hate it when we compare ourselves to other schools, but are these other schools breaking the law? There's other schools that do live in the classroom with kids in the classroom. They record. I can give you examples. Are they breaking the law?
I think it goes to if the kids have their media releases or not. I mean, a lot of that is around if parents are willing to sign those media releases.
Maybe we need to pursue that.
This is more of a broad question. When is the round of standardized testing going through all of the schools? So we start getting,
We,
it's all
it's
done?
done for the fall. The NWEAs are finished. Yeah.
Okay. To Dane's point, I don't know if going ahead and spending a boatload of money is the best until we have that data, but I think we're looking, personally, just listening to all of the administrators, I think I would seriously support more interventionist staff. Just on the pure basis of, irregardless if we're using it for students out of school or not, I think we're gonna need it. But where we're still having students out for 30 days, where we're having the learning loss from the last 3 years, I think, when I talked to Jay about moving that 80,000, this was the point, was that we can start addressing learning loss and we can plug the gaps for students being out of school. So, I don't know what the board's consensus is, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Jake?
So I know we mentioned that we don't have the funds or the technology set up. So why can't we set up the technology? Why can't we move in that direction? Because this is an ongoing issue. I mean, this is all last year. Even if we get pool testing put in place, we're still going to have kids who are out quarantined for 10 days regardless. You're still going to have kids who are home, hold classes. Yes, they'll go remote. But what about the kids who are like half the class is quarantined? There's one teacher that was willing to do it. I think that should really kind of be the standard. And how do we support that? And how does that happen? What do the teachers need in order for that to be a realistic solution? Because the kids should be able to Zoom in just like other school districts have been able to. And if we could record, then that would be even better, because for the kids that can't be online during school hours, because of accommodations of where they have to be while they're quarantined. So then they have the ability to go back and catch up on that, because like everybody has said, it is very concerning how much school kids are missing already this year even.
Right.
I just want to say, I think I'm making notes. I know the principals are nodding their heads and making notes as well. I mean, we're in an ever evolving situation in terms of how the quarantines and the close contacts are being administered this year. I think people are right. It's vastly different. It's more challenging in some ways because you have to walk through each individual situation. That the work plans here that are set forth, I think were just springboards for potential discussions on what might need to change or happen in the future. But they were really just to give a roadmap of what a schedule could or should look like if you are remote. I think these intricacies that we're talking about, and I don't want to speak for everyone in the A team, but obviously with Superintendent Charette not here right now, everyone is thinking about how to execute a plan in a more in a manner that would best suit where we're currently at with our educational situation. But we need time to do that, and we also need to be able to work through that as an A team. And I think even within the 10, 14 days that I've been doing this, the landscape has changed vastly from then in terms of the sheer number of quarantines, the sheer number of cases that have taken out individual students or pockets of teams or classes. And your questions are all perfectly valid, and I don't think we have an answer for you tonight, but I do know that it's something that we need to work on. The principals need to talk to the staff about it and get some feedback. Really the hope today was informationally just to say that the communication tool of what could be done or what the expectation of a remote day would be, whether you're absent, with a non-COVID related absence, or whether it's COVID related in your quarantine, is just to try to put that out there and then work from that structure. It's happening at a rapid pace right now that I think we need to, certainly talk about it. And I know that, when Superintendent Charette comes back, that's going to be one of the main focuses, and certainly how to allocate money that we may have to build those resources will be a discussion. But I think in the interim of that, the A team will keep trying to think creatively and talk to the teachers about what that might be. But I do want to say that everyone is trying to work on it. They're just trying to make sure that we do it in a way that is appropriate to the situation and also understanding of all the resources that we do have or that we don't have. And yes, it's great to say we have $80,000, but I'll speak for myself with my primary role as a special ed director. I have plenty of open positions I have not been able to fill all year. So I can have $500,000 at my disposal and want to throw that at 10 positions for ed techs. And it doesn't mean that I get a single applicant. So I think the reality of the situation, there's a plan A, there's a plan B, there's a plan C, and there's a plan triple Z. And I think every single one needs to be kind of thought about. And, you know, those hopes are great and they're wonderful, but it will take more time than be able to answer direct questions tonight at the board meeting. So I know it will be on our agenda the next time that we have an 18 meeting. And I think the principals and the administration will do some legwork to think about it creatively. So I just wanted to say that.
Do you have like a date for that?
Does anyone else have any questions or anything that anyone that hasn't said anything yet? Is there anything that you'd like to, Kim?
It's discussable.
We'll figure these out eventually.
I won't. Make no promises on figuring this out ever. I think to Sean's point earlier, and I think way back when we started talking about plans and this, that, the other thing, I commented that sometimes asking other districts, schools, whatever it may be, what they're doing. Obviously, if we have some examples of schools that are able to do remote already, if we could reach out to someone at a district or school that's making it work and find out how, what technology do you have, what do the teachers need for education in order to make that happen, what age groups are you doing it in, perhaps it's something that you can't do for younger kids, but you could do for older kids. I sometimes feel like we're trying to solve the problem just within this room, when really if we reach outside of this room and open our box a little bit more, perhaps we can get some suggestions and create a list on what we may be able to do with the $500,000 that was just given to us by Ryan. It could be a really nice big long list, I don't know, or a much smaller list with the 80,000 that we actually have. But either way, if we could, I mean, I'm sure all of you know, whether it's teachers or administrators in other districts, if we just asked some of those questions or spoke to someone, maybe we can start. It doesn't have to be, I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be solved just with these brains. There are a lot of brains that will also share information with us, I think, readily if we just ask.
Thank you, Kim.
I will just say, I'm not trying to avoid a date on it. That's not within my purview right now to be able to answer and give a concrete. Superintendent Charette will address those things that came up as questions from the board meetings since he's been out, and he'll work on that with us as an administrative team, but I don't feel like that's my role right now to be able to answer that question for him.
That's fine. And I just want to respond to one thing that Sean did say about how a lot of this is out of our control. And we have to do what the CDC tells us. We have to do what the DOE tells us. So what I've been encouraging people to do is write to the DOE, write to the CDC. I've already written 2 letters myself personally, not as a board rep. But I'm beginning to feel that the more they hear from people that are here doing it on the ground every day and what the impact really is of whether it's 3 feet, 6 feet, you know, some of these arbitrary, I didn't say that, things that they've told us that we have to follow. I think it's time that they started hearing how this is really impacting our kids. And the only way they're going to do that is if more and more people let them know what's really happening here on the ground. So I'd encourage you to write a letter or 2 or 3. I'm going to do my 3rd one tomorrow. Patty?
I think that's all. I think that's a great idea. I just want to, it seems like we're winding down this conversation for the moment. And I just wanted to ask you, Ryan, or the A-team when you meet together to pass along the emphasis that I heard from a bunch of people tonight in talking about the possibilities of different ideas, because there are 40 million moving parts all the time, right? Ever-changing moving parts, that we would like to support the staff and feel like staff is doing a great job. I just really think that we can't say that often.
And thank you,
And
Patty.
we know things need to change and they're not perfect and it has to get better, but it isn't because we think staff members aren't doing what they need to do.
Thank you.
And times 10, yeah.
Thanks, Patty, for saying that. That's something that please make sure that that message gets to them. And I'll just tell you experience that I had today. I'm working remotely with two of my grandsons right now. And all I could think of all day was, this teacher is incredible. This teacher is so awesome. How is she doing this? I had a second grade and a fifth grade. I'm like, the work that it takes for them to do what they were doing is like, I did it for like 4 hours today and I had to go take a nap. But anyway, so we do really appreciate all that they're doing, and we want to make sure that they hear that message loud and clear. And what you guys are doing too. Okay, so moving along. The next thing on our agenda is the resolutions. Thank you for coming. So what we need to do with these resolutions is we need to go down through each one of them and say yay or nay if we want. When Tyler goes to the delegate assembly, do we want him to vote in favor or not in favor of these new resolutions that have been put forth by the Maine School Board Association? So hopefully you all have a copy of them. So the first one is about school board training. The very first one has been deleted, so I'm just going to skip right over that one. That one's no longer needed because the legislature changed some to the Education Service Center, so we don't need to look at that one anymore. So that one's just been eliminated. So the next one is, it's about the school board training, and the School Board Association is committed to sharing and expanding training opportunities, utilizing in part a regional approach and tapping local board members and others as training. And the reason that I'm reading these,
Where are you?
oh, I'm on the resolutions on the very, I think
They were in last week's.
they were in last week. Can't hear you, Betty. This was the most one I just,
Which one do you have there?
We,
okay, which one do you have? This is the
I
one
have-
I thought I just printed this
I have
out
the one.
today.
I have the one that we got sent. Give me a minute.
It's on page 4 of 11 is the one that I have.
Yeah.
Is that what everyone else has?
Okay, then I think I did, I printed this off today, so I guess they've updated them and renumbered them, sorry. Okay, thank you, Betty, for getting me on track. Okay, so the first one is, let me make sure I can see this right, student absenteeism, okay? And again, the reason I'm going to read these is I know that you guys can all read, but I think because of the public, the people that are listening and watching might want to hear what these are all about and, you know, what we're actually working on. So that's why I'm going to just quickly read them. So Maine School Board Association supports the Department of Education goal of having all students be in attendance at least 95% of their academic year. This goal can only be achieved if there are interventions and supports for those students who are too often absent. Communication with parents, guardians around chronic absenteeism is critical, as are school-based supports such as mentoring, counseling, and tutoring. Alternative programs for at-risk students, either on a local or regional level, should also be supported. Should efforts not be successful through traditional communication with parents and guardians, MSBA urges proactive efforts for communication and supports through DHHS and other local or state agencies. So the underlying portion is what they wanted to add to that. So do we want Tyler to vote in favor of this or not? In favor? This is just going to be like a general consensus so that he knows what to do.
Yay. Okay, all right, yay.
Looks like everybody says yay for that. Okay, now we're on to the school board training. Maine School Board Association committed to sharing and expanding training opportunities, utilizing in part a regional approach and tapping local board members and others as trainers. MSBA encourages local boards to adopt policies that incorporate the local board's commitment to the education of its board members and reflect its need to annually budget the funds necessary to fulfill this important responsibility. Possible areas of discussion include equity in education, FOAA, explanation of MSBA services, board governance, local committee purpose and structure, board leadership training, and other items of interest and concern within local school boards. Do we want to support this or have Tyler support this? Go ahead, Betty.
My question like this was, why, what's the purpose of the example? Just because examples can be very limiting.
thinking about what school is doing.
Let's see if it's got-
Examples added to what is actually the policy.
So in the notes that I had, the rationale says that local school boards are constantly changing with new members routinely coming onto the board. Learning roles and responsibilities of a board member is key for school boards. Important topics of ongoing learning are offered as options for school board training as noted within the revised resolution. That was their rationale for doing that. And I,
Understand that, but I also know that examples can be very limited. So why do we need to do that? Each school board is very specific rather than
and I'm not sure that at this, I think at the delegates assembly, you can request to change some of the wording. I think that was, so if you, if people feel that we want to maybe add something such as these examples or ask why they're there or eliminate the examples, I don't know.
I think it's broad. It says possible areas of discussion. Doesn't say required areas. It doesn't, but it does in that we, each of us have a limited experience to various degrees with what school boards need to deal with. Having suggestions, I don't see it as limiting us, but rather broadening it by keeping ahead of us, in front of our eyes, and future boards, the idea of things that, generally speaking, are recommended for boards to know about, because very often they're liable to have to deal with things related to them. And as long as it doesn't mandate it, it's not going to interfere with local decisions as to, well, we don't need that, or we do need something else.
I agree with that, Dave. I mean, it kind of like says responsible areas, and then it says any other interests or items. So I kind of read it as like, here's some training that you could possibly, like,
And it does say other items of interest and
Right.
concerns with the local.
I
school board.
think, in my reading of it, I think it's more just to give you those baseline things that all boards should be doing. And then it's up to the individual boards to figure out what they need to do specific to their district. At least, I mean, that's how I read it.
That's what I was just going to say. I agree with David too. And each of the things listed is itself so broad. You know what I mean? Like that it's just saying background on these huge broad things that it doesn't seem limiting to when I read it, but I understand.
The training.
But examples can be limiting.
So do we want Tyler to approve or disapprove? Approve? Okay. The next one is curriculum policy. School boards are legally responsible for adopting policies with respect to curriculum. Therefore, the Maine School Board Association urges local school boards to recognize that it's imperative they develop and implement curriculum policies that reflect the best interests of the students and the community and include in-person, remote, regional collaboration learning opportunities. That's the new part right there. Recognizing the importance of rigorous core curriculum for all students, MSBA urges local school boards to establish policies which require continuous evaluation of curriculum and graduation requirements, Such policy should reflect the goal of creating and maintaining rigorous standards designed to provide students with the skills necessary for them to succeed in the global society. Furthermore, these policies should lead to curriculum design to achieve specific learning outcomes. MSBA also encourages local school boards to regularly review and revise these policies. Any discussion on this one?
That's how I read it.
Yep.
That, and I think they want us to be more regionally collaborative with other districts. Yeah.
So the other piece of that in the copy that I printed off today, it says these policies, as much as possible and as appropriate, should include plans for in-person, remote, regional collaborative learning, and keeping in mind disabilities and health concerns of all students to ensure inclusiveness of all instruction. So they added a few more words there. So do we want Tyler to say yes?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is to remove the alternative programs resolution. So that one is, let me see. Trying to go back and forth between these two. All right, so that one's just going to be removed. So that'll still be a vote of yes or no, do you want to remove it? And that's the School Board Association urges local school boards to approve educational programs that interest, engage, and motivate each student to realize their potential and result in successful completion of their high school experience while equipping them with high school diploma or equivalency. That one's the one that they want to replace it with. It's about multiple pathways, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody good on that one? Okay. The next one is to replace the current teacher evaluation to say Maine School Board Association urges local school boards to develop a comprehensive teacher evaluation policy designed to measure and improve effectiveness in instruction on a continuous basis. Feedback is critical for all educators, regardless of where they are in their career. Evaluation systems need to be based on high performance standards and supported by ongoing professional development and mentorship. The process should address all aspects of teaching performance and recognize the fulfillment of student needs as a primary importance. And then there's some other pieces there that they want to delete. Go ahead. The comprehensive teacher evaluation policy. Any other discussion on that one? Do we want Tyler to say yes?
I feel like we're deleting a lot of information. There's like 3 different sections that we're deleting, and why are we deleting that much information when it comes to teacher eval?
Are you looking at the same? We're
Yeah,
still talking about this.
it goes
Okay,
on
yeah,
to the next
yeah.
page, and it's all part of the
Okay.
same thing.
Let me see if I have the rationale here.
I mean, I think it's part of because we
Is
just,
this because it was I would be interested to hear what the rationale is. Is this because it was the effective educator Marzano evaluation model that was required for everybody, but now it is not, and districts can decide, or the board policy is supporting districts deciding? What is the rationale set?
I'm trying to figure out where this matches with the ones that I've got for the rationale. Hold on.
because I was gonna say, isn't this also part of like the fact that they scrapped standard, like this proficiency-based diplomas that they turned around and
So
scrapped?
I don't think
what,
so. I don't think this is.
this
related to
says
that.
delete and replace the 3 resolutions with this one. So I think the 3 resolutions were improving instruction through administrative supervision and evaluation, teacher evaluation and compensation, and performance standards for teachers. Those were the 3 resolutions previously. So I think what they wanted to do is just take those out and just combine it all into this one. Which
On
was,
top of that, the third section is actually suggesting the state, it's really talking to the state to decide how they thought things should be evaluated. And so I feel it's probably being taken out because the third one at least is out of date.
right.
And not needed.
So just so that you know, the way these resolutions came to be was a team of people working like for a year, looking at all the resolutions, coming up with, their school board members from all around the state, looking at, what's a better way to say this, what's a better way to help school boards with their policies, and they came to the agreement that this would be better for school boards to be able to follow. So, yeah. Okay, so what do we want Tyler to do?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. On to the next one. Let's see. So this one's about adding to the administrative shortage. Maine School Board Association recognizes significant decline in the number of qualified candidates for administrative positions at all levels, but particularly in the areas of superintendency and high school principalship. MSBA believes the urgency of this matter should be addressed jointly by the Department of Education, the State Board of Education, the University of Maine System, and other higher education institutions and the Maine legislature. Then they want to add, it also recommends the support and reestablishment of the leadership academies to enhance this effort. And those are leadership academies to the DOE, and I believe that they've been reestablished this year, I think. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think they have. Yeah, I think, yeah. So do we want Tyler to say yes to this one?
Yes.
Okay. The next one, funding of services to students with severe disabilities. Maine School Board Association strongly urges the Commission of Education, State Board of Education, and other commissioners in the Children's Cabinet to, they crossed out develop and just changed it to maintain mechanism for increased financial assistance to schools faced with high costs for students with severe disabilities and/or students who may need out-of-district placement. Further, the governor and the legislature are urged to provide full funding on an annual basis and to add a provision to the law which would allow these reimbursable costs to be excluded from local school budgets. What do we think?
Yeah.
Any discussions or questions? Okay. See where we at. All the way down to learning loss. Okay, so the new and revised and proposed for 2021, these are new. The first one's about learning loss, concerned about learning loss due to summer vacation or the disruption caused by the pandemic is discussed but seldom quantified. The Maine School Board Association believes a student-centered approach looks at individual academic achievement and informs what support systems are needed and for whom is more effective approach. The Department of Education needs to be involved in this work in terms of developing appropriate measurement tools and sharing effective interventions developed by their curriculum experts with consideration of appropriate funding.
I mean, personally, I like to have summer vacation struck out of that.
You'd
But
like
I
to
mean-
have summer vacation, but there is learning loss.
Well,
sometimes over summer
I understand
vacation.
why it's in there. by the way.
We don't want there to be learning loss over summer
Right.
vacation, that's
Right.
Their rationale is learning loss of individual students is not a new concept, but we need to continue to support individual student growth in critical subject areas and identify and address individual student needs. What do we want Tyler to do?
It's saying is a more effective approach. So is it down sort of in the middle? The change that's suggesting is a more effective approach,
yeah.
then does that mean then the way districts have been evaluated as a whole on their learning level? And it's recommending that it be refocused on the individual students and their needs rather than penalizing the district for overall not doing. I may just be reading too much into it. It would, I think it
Yeah,
would be
that's
good
how,
for that. to be
yeah, that's how I read
changed.
it too.
Yeah, that.
So I like the idea of this, but I just was trying to understand it.
Any other questions or discussion on this one? So do we want Tyler to vote for this one? Okay, Dropout prevention. Maine School Board Association supports the Department of Education's goal of a 90% or better graduation rate. MSBA recognizes there are many factors that can lead to student dropping out of school. There needs to be early interventions for at-risk students and support both at state and local level for multiple pathways such as adult ed to earn a diploma. This is imperative not only for our students, but for our society, which needs an educated, engaged workforce and citizenry. MSBA additionally and proactively urges MDOE and U.S. Education Department to redefine high school dropouts so that high school graduates are inclusive of students who attain the achievement within 6 years of initiating grade 9, including those who have utilized an alternative pathway within the 6-year timeline, also to be considered a high school graduate. Any discussion on this one?
I don't see a problem with that.
Everybody good for Tyler to go for it? Okay. Binding arbitration. The Maine School Board Association opposes any legislation that would allow binding arbitration on salaries, pensions, and insurance because the fiscal impact of these significant cost drivers in the school budget should be decided locally by elected school boards, not outside arbitrators who have no stake in the community. Any questions or discussions about this one?
I mean, as somebody who studies labor law and labor economics, it ties more into the second one. We have an issue, we have a crisis of teachers right now where there's super high teacher attrition, and to, I guess, remove avenues for them to have options to fight for better wages. If it ends up being a larger financial impact, but it increases teacher retention through them being able to negotiate for better wages, for better pensions. I think long-term for districts, I think it's going to be better off. The example that I would use is what happened in West Virginia, where they had decades upon decades upon decades of the state and local school boards not supporting them financially. And then they used a massive strike and arbitration to raise their wages. And they've seen, I hesitate to support something like this when we're having a crisis of teachers leaving the profession because it's not financially sustainable, especially within the local school district. We're in public school.
Any other
To me,
discussion?
that's very important. I actually approve of it, and I'll explain why. I don't really think they need to be throwing in the outside arbitrators who have no stake in the community. The arbitrators are just as likely, they could be from the community, and they could be very serious about caring for the community. So to me, that sentence is political. However, in terms of allowing the local community, the school board, to have the authority to work with the teachers, and I think in our district, it has been demonstrated repeatedly that rather than, as in West Virginia, just shutting out the teachers, that it has been a joint effort with the teachers or the teachers union to find out how we can support the teachers and support the students, because it's very important that we respect that. And I think in our district, we have been able to do that, and the teachers have been able to speak up, and they have been very clear about what they would like, but also been willing to talk with us and work with us about what is possible within this community's, or many communities, but this group's capabilities. So I'm fine with it, except I don't think that last sentence is needed or appropriate, but it won't hurt it to leave it in there.
I agree that after spending the amount of time that we do during the negotiations to come up with what is workable for the teachers or whoever we're negotiating with. Spending the amount of time that we do and keeping in mind what our communities can take as far as a hit to the budget. I think it's very important that we keep it to the school board and the teachers within that district, not leave it to outside arbitrators to make the decision as to how we spend our money.
I agree.
So we want Tyler to agree with this. That's what I'm seeing. Okay.
And just as a note, arbitration is allowed to be mandated for a lot of the negotiation process. If the teachers and we just, and other units, as Betty pointed out, just can't agree. A lot of the parts will go to arbitration and they and we will settle for what's left. And it's
Luckily,
just,
we've never made it to arbitration. We've gone to the first step and the second step, mediation, but not to arbitration. So that's good.
Okay, and the last one is the right to strike. Maine School Board Association opposes any legislation that would give school personnel the right to strike. Strikes severely disrupt the education of children and the lives of their families. Even a short strike could upend the academic year, breaking educational continuity for students and throwing off school calendars for instruction and in-school and after-school activities. Strikes could also put our students at risk if they are in unsupervised settings at school or at home. Any discussion on this one?
I look to West Virginia, and I think something that I think is missing from education over the last 40 years, and it's something that I've noticed going through education, is there is a lack of students being aware of what they have, like power that the whole purpose of public schooling is so that we prepare students to enter the workforce or go to college. And I think that while, yes, I completely agree that strikes are disruptive to the learning environment and they have their own repercussions, I look at it as if there ever was a strike, not that I think there ever would be, because I think the state does a good job of working with the teachers union and working with staff to prevent them. I just think that if there ever was one or the threat of one, I think it provides its own unique learning opportunities to the students so that they can see that there is power, that they have power in the workforce. And I think it's something that students are missing and that workers generally as a whole are missing within the broader economy.
I think that I have to disagree that the major people that would be hurt by a strike are students with the disruption of their education. And to me, that's just not acceptable.
I agree.
I agree.
I think within Maine, we have a very broad, which is good in its way, a broad array of school boards. And some of them, I've seen some close, are probably right in line with some of what was reportedly evident in West Virginia. And others, like ours, of course, are very supportive of working with everyone in the community to make it a team that's going to support the students. So in some ways, I don't think shutting out strikes is good. I think just as with the arbitration issues, both sides can and normally do work hard, whether it's coming with any business, when there's a strike being considered, there's normally extra effort to say, okay, how can we bring this together so that neither the business, the students, in our case, the school, and those working for the school are going to be disrupted, because it's a very serious disruption to everyone. So I'm not against a law that removes the right to strike, but I also don't think it is as valuable or as important personally.
Patty?
This is just a question. Is there a law?
That's
Yes.
it. That, okay.
Has it been around for a long time?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So this, if a bill went in front of the legislature to change that law, the Maine School Board Association would be against that. That's what this resolution is about.
Is there any?
There has been bills on both these last two that actually got vetoed
Right.
by the current governor. So,
Yes.
Right.
and they were
That's
sustained.
the only thing that kept it from becoming law.
No, to allow strikes.
So she
Yeah.
vetoed it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We ready to say we want Tyler to go for this one? Okay. You just,
I'm abstaining.
okay. Okay, Tyler, you all set? Did we get them all?
Yeah, I think I'm right. It's my job easy, yes, down the line.
Okay.
Should we add one? Massachusetts, they have the national.
Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is to look at our norms that we had talked about, I think, a month ago now. So I sent out again, I kind of collated them all and put them together, and I didn't get any feedback. So I'm wondering if there's any discussion on any of those, if we want to go with those. They're in your folder, if you want to look at them. Any changes you want us to make?
I just had one, under share your ideas,
Uh-huh.
where everyone speaks before someone goes again. I agree with that, but I just thought it's kind of difficult to manage that. So I don't know if that would be, I don't know.
I agree. I agree. It is
I mean,
difficult to manage that.
I'm for it, but if, I almost feel like if you don't want to talk, then I'm just gonna, I mean, you got,
Right.
I'm just gonna keep going.
Rebecca, what did you say?
That maybe our strive for having everyone speak.
I think that's a great way to put it, because I think it's important to have it right here so that people are thinking about how many times have I spoken and Patty hasn't said anything.
What did you say?
Strive for everyone. Okay, I'll change that. Thank you. Any other changes or eliminations or additions that you want me to do?
An odd question.
Sure.
Sorry. I know that before when we did like the, people who could drop into the Zoom link, they were able to talk and discuss. Is it possible for board members who aren't here to be able to have that ability still? Is there, I'm just curious, it's more of a question. I didn't know, because if there's somebody on the board who's immunocompromised and they really can't be here, they don't get to have their voice at that point. So I guess I was just curious, like why we ended up getting rid of that, and it's just more of a curiosity.
That's a good question. Did you have something that?
Yeah, I'm not 100% positive on this, but I think I'm pretty close that when we were in a state of emergency, that was allowable for these public sessions, but until the policy committee addresses that, and it is on the policy committee's agenda, then it can't be made as an open option in terms of back and forth. So I think that's why it's just a video stream in.
That's what Jay had told me also,
And
that
I might have a memory still.
the law doesn't allow it unless our policy says it can.
That was my understanding also. Betty?
And just for me, it is important to have that option. So anyone on the policy committee, I'm just speaking what I would like to have. I would like to have that option to attend by Zoom if possible.
To attend and be able to participate.
Yes,
Not just listen.
yes.
Right.
Related,
Absolutely. I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
I would have lost my voice for several months last year if we hadn't had that option, so.
I know, for instance, the charter schools have all adopted that policy, and most of the state agencies and so forth have changed their policies to allow, just like we had last year. And I'd really love for our policy committee to be pulled together as soon as possible to do that, because
Because it
Right.
takes 2 months, the first reading and the
Right.
second reading, so we're gonna be into next year
Right.
before we're able to do that.
We have an,
We have a
we have an
date?
upcoming meeting. I don't know what.
We
the-
do?
In November. I don't know what the date is, but we do have. It will be sometime in November. So it'll be coming soon. So we'll try to, and we'll get that one going right away.
Maybe we can expedite it.
We'll try.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to expedite because we have a policy for that too.
First and second reading. Any other discussions, additions, or deletions from the norms?
I think they're great. Thank you.
Me too.
Patty?
I just would like to say, and I think I've said it a lot and you're going to be annoyed by it, but that it would be great to somehow check in on how we're doing with these at some point. I don't know if that means the self-evaluation at the end of the year or what, but I don't want to lose that piece of it.
So actually, my next question was, how are we going to hold ourselves responsible for these norms? So if these are the norms that we want and we agree on, what I'll do is I'll have them made up into like a chart or something that we can see and have in front of us at every meeting. And then we really do need to think about how are we going to hold ourselves responsible to these norms? Do we want to do something and have somebody like process observe at every meeting and then report back out how we did? Do we want to have each individual person think about one norm for every meeting and really concentrate on that just individually? I mean, I'm just throwing some ideas out there. It's up to you guys how you want it to. But I do think it's important that we hold ourselves accountable to these norms. Betty?
I think it would be great to have a process observer. I'm not sure that that would be possible at every meeting, but some of the longer meetings, we may not. It might be more valuable at some of those longer meetings. And if we could do it in, 30 seconds or less, just check in to see how we did, it would be valuable. So I'm conflicted about those long meetings, whether to take the time, or if we do it every meeting or every other meeting, or especially at the workshop meetings. I don't know.
Rebecca?
I think it might be beneficial to have a process observer, but I don't know if it's really necessary for them to report out at every meeting. Maybe when we do our self-evaluation, they provide a report that just says how they think we did over this period of time. But I don't think it's necessary that we report out at every meeting on how we did.
Perhaps this person or people that would do the observing, or any of us, if we notice something we're uncomfortable with, we should set up the process where they speak to either the process observer or to the chair, so that there's a feedback process for it. So there's the observer that would speak to the chair, or if they thought something was out of place, speak up to all of us perhaps. I really appreciate how on some of these, we have a lot of attention to them, like be solutions oriented while assuming positive intent. I think everybody works on that, but particularly Dane has been very good at working at solutions orientation, and so each of us is giving in some way, and that's one of the extra strong points that he's been doing.
Dave?
I think one thing that, all of us can kind of, in a way, check each other, right? So if I'm getting heated about something and I don't notice it in myself, but it's something I'm passionate about, I can come across as confrontational, and that's definitely not my intention. But having a peer, one of, our other board members, be able to just kind of say, hey, it's just, we have each other too for those things. I noticed that, oh yeah, this person's really getting kind of worked up, like after the meeting, be able to reach out to each other and say, hey, remember, we're gonna go back to our, our norms that we had all agreed on. And sometimes we just don't realize it.
Right.
You know, you don't realize how you come across or your body language during a certain situation. And I think sometimes just having a peer that's, willing, and I know that, I would let other people, if I thought something was out of the norm, know. It's good to know right after, instead of waiting for an evaluation after 3 months to say,
Right.
well, back on this date,
Right.
you did this, and, oh, I did?
Yeah, I agree. I think as long as, like, we don't need a every meeting report. I feel very good about this board as far as like communicating with each other, and just keeping that open dialogue. Like if you did have a problem with somebody, then like, human interaction is key to,
Yeah.
squash it and not just leave angry, and I think that's huge. But I think that like if you notice one of my big thing is respect. If there's a big respect issue, then that should probably be addressed amongst the board, where if it's just like a spat between two board members, they could like, hey, I just want to clear the air here.
Right.
I don't know. That's my thoughts on it.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I've observed, beforehand, and there's a couple eye rollings and stuff like this, and that is totally like not good, and that's one of the reasons why I actually truly, that was one of my top norms. I might not disagree with you, but when the eye rolling thing gets it.
Right.
We don't need that because this is
That's not helpful.
not helpful.
So what I can do is I can take everybody's ideas and put them together and maybe come up with something that we can all look at and see if we can agree on it. I think it is really important for us to do this on a pretty regular basis, and I don't think it has to take very long. If I said, okay, somebody want to be process observer tonight, and we're at the end of the meeting, we go, we did a good job tonight. We're all set. That's it. There may be things where we need to really talk about them right then after the meeting. So I think if that's okay with everyone, I'll just try to combine everything and get it back out to you and see what you think. Is that all right? Okay, I'm seeing yes. Not seeing any eye rolls, David, so we're good. Okay, let's see. Let me look at the agenda, see where we're at. I know the next thing is the goals, the board goals. So again, I tried to put together something like a springboard for us to start talking about our goals. Again, it's in your folder. What I did is I went to the goals that the administrators had put together that Jay had given us a couple weeks ago, and I tried to make sure that I incorporated those in our goals, because it's really important that we're all on the same path with our goals. And this is sort of what I came up with. So if you want to talk about it now, we read them over, react to them, say, no, let's cross these all out and start all over again, that's fine. I just wanted us to have a place to start a discussion. Ready?
I like what you did. And it's a good starting point for discussion. One thing that I would like to add that we have been doing pretty much, but just put it right out there, is recognizing staff and students for the things that are happening. Sometimes do that, it's like the cause tonight. Especially going above and beyond already, it's just I really want them to know how much they're appreciated.
And that really fits right under retaining our staff. I mean, I think all those little things that we can do so that they know that we appreciate them help,
Yeah,
hopefully,
yeah.
retain staff. So that fits right there. Thank you, Betty. I've written that down, so I will incorporate that somehow.
I would recommend perhaps a slight adjustment of budget approval by the voters will be one indicator of our
Okay, yep.
success,
Mhm.
because there are so many other factors that have to be taken into account, as important as that one is.
Sure. The reason that I wrote it that way, David, is because the goal said we will present a budget with resources that will support, and then if we're
I see, so
successful,
tied
then
to that goal.
the voters will
Thank you.
approve that budget.
We had,
Go ahead, Betty.
I'm sorry, by June of 2022, we actually have to have it by April.
Right, but the voters vote on it in June, right?
I looked at the calendar, and we have,
Yeah, it sounds like the first meeting in May.
April 13th is a vote on the budget.
That's for us to vote on
And
it. right?
May is the annual meeting.
Oh, May.
May.
But then the vote is the referendum is in June,
June, yes.
which is why I wanted to give
So-
us all that. I mean, I can change the date. It doesn't, I mean, what do people think?
I mean, I guess June is the penultimate date. If it's gonna pass, if it doesn't pass in June, we're back to square one.
We could say that the RSU 38 Board of Directors will present a budget with resources, et cetera, that for vote in June 22. Somehow just put the June 22 in a different spot.
You could just put in 2022. Leave it open.
Okay, I'm going to take out by June of 2022.
May is the annual meeting.
I think aren't the ballots already,
We don't do
Uh-huh.
any more work on the budget after the annual meeting, April, what did I say? May.
something?
We can't do anything more
Right.
after that.
Yeah, it can get adjusted at that meeting, but an action out of that meeting has to occur.
Right.
I just said that at that May meeting, the annual meeting, it can get adjusted, which is why they get presented that way, and which is why we split out that 1 year. But I think action on the budget has to occur at that point, and then whatever action happens is what gets taken in June. But I could be mistaken on the finer details, but June is when it would fully be finalized at this town level.
Right. And then if it gets voted down in June, then you come back to the drawing board.
Right.
Yeah, then you're left with the initial one that you have at the
Right.
current time, and you have to come back to
We're going to
it.
go back to our goal and figure out why they didn't pass. What do we need to do differently?
I just
Either
had
date would be fine.
one small suggestion. We talk a lot about keeping students first and placing the students in the center. I just feel this is our goal that's written down in black and white, where we have that we will present a budget with resources that will support the RSU 38. I feel like we should put students.
You want to put students first?
That's just, if that's our written goal, and we kind of strive to keep students first.
Okay, I did it. You want to put just students or
No,
students?
no, just students.
Just students
ahead
first.
of-
Okay, yep. That's fine. Is everybody all right with that?
And then I would also swap faculty administrator, I put administrators at the end, not the end of like students, faculty administrators.
Okay.
Not saying it's order of importance, but I think it comes across better.
Okay, students, faculty, staff.
Administrators, parents, community.
Okay. I'll put administrators before parents. All right, I'm doing that. Okay.
Sorry.
Patty?
I have a question about number 2 and about the 90%, keep retaining 90% of current staff, which is an awesome aim. Do you know, does anybody know what, because the rate of staff turnover, the percentage of staff turnover was way lower than that a few years ago, but I don't know what it was last year or does
I just
anybody know?
kinda, that was a hopeful.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I'm just curious. It
I
just
don't
made me
know
curious.
what, we could find that out and I could adjust that if it's.
I don't know that it needs adjusting. I just was curious.
I would think
That
keep
would
the
be-
goal.
Yeah, I was gonna say
because
keep the goal.
Previous years were lower and last year, the last year and a half, 2 years has been a mess, which is going to give distorted things on everything, including, for instance, on the, I believe the state may have changed or it's, as was noted in the evaluation of the tests that all the students get and evaluating them and the schools on them when it was such a mess the last year and a half that it wouldn't be fair to hold everybody to the same standards. We still want the test to evaluate where everything is, but penalizing the students, the staff, the districts for it is something I think the state has backed off on for now. At least that's what I heard.
Should I keep the 90% in?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Any other goals, any other additions that we want to add to these? No? Okay, so I just wanted to like see a general consensus that these are going to be our goals for the year. Okay, I'll reword them and make sure I put administrative where you want them, Tyler.
And students.
And students. If students are always first.
And I apologize to everybody for getting off track there.
Sorry.
I went on a side trip.
So just before we adjourn, I just wanted to say one more thing is, and I've been meaning to say this and I keep forgetting, but when Jay and David and I, and now Ryan, while Jay's out, meet to set the agenda for each of our meetings, if anybody has anything they want us to put on the agenda, we welcome anything that you want. Because Jay's usually got what he wants and I kind of have some things and Dave, but we need all of your ideas too. So if you have anything that you want on the agenda, please email either Jay or myself before we meet and we'll make sure that it's on the agenda. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move it.
Second? It's moved in second. We shall adjourn. Anybody opposed? I don't like you.